You are now watching the Vision News Network, your home for news on world evangelism all around the world. Please enjoy today's episode.
Hi, this is Noah Combs, and I want to welcome you to the Vision News Network, where we bring to you news from all around the world and show you the need for the gospel. But first up today, we're going to go to the country of Turkey, where they're having an influx of refugees into the country, which actually is causing logistical problems for the government, but is opening doors to spread the gospel. Now we go to Brady Van Winkle, who is on the ground in Turkey, and he's going to give us a report on what's going on in the country.
Hello, this is Brady Van Winkle coming to you from Izmir, Turkey, and just wanted to tell you some news about what's going on in the country of Turkey right now. And the past several years, there's been a number of refugees that have been coming in through Turkey, and really the figures are close to over 4 million refugees, and probably 3.5 million or more of them are from Syria. And I was reading a statistic that shocked me today, and that statistic was that there's close to 50% of those refugees that are here in Turkey are between the ages of 0, baby, and 18 years old. So there's a young Syrian population in Turkey, but there's also people from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, places like that, and Turkey has opened their arms and said, come on in, we want to welcome you, we want to help you out here. The only thing they're asking is to try to get them to learn the Turkish language. And with all these refugees here in the country of Turkey, that means there's an open door to reach people in some of these countries like Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, that are really hard for Americans, really hard for anyone to get into as just a missionary. But the doors are wide open right now in the country of Turkey, and it's not that difficult to get in here. It's not that difficult, and there's openness, there's freedom to take the gospel and to see churches planted. So there is a great opportunity in the country of Turkey. I ask you to pray for these refugees in Turkey. One, pray that they can get back home and they can get resettled somewhere, but also pray that the gospel can get to them. Pray they can be reached with the gospel and then sent back to their country, sent back throughout the Middle East, and that we can see the Middle East reach with the gospel through the country of Turkey.
Next, we'll update you on the political and religious scene in Nepal and how very soon there could be not only a change in leadership, but also a change in the whole government structure. This could affect missionaries on the field in reaching people with the gospel. We're going to go now to Justice Mize to get some detailed information on the scene in Nepal.
Hello, my name is Justice Mize. My wife and I are church-planting missionaries to the country of Nepal, and we wanted to report to you something that's happening in the political situation there right now. There's a right-wing Nepalese party that is trying to refound the Hindu government. Actually, in 2006, Nepal went from a monarchy to a constitutional democratic state. But what's happening now is, due to the majority of Nepali people being Hindu, there's a large percentage of people voting to turn Nepal back into a theocratic state, a Hindu theocratic state. And so we would ask you that you would please pray for the country of Nepal, pray for the people. It is a country that is under a lot of persecution. There's a lot of Christians there that need more freedom, and Satan and his demonic powers are at work there, keeping the gospel suppressed. So please pray and consider what you can do to help reach Nepali people with the gospel. Thank you.
So recently, Egypt had the 4th anniversary of the murder of 21 Coptic Christians. The sad reality is that both the murderers and those murdered follow a religion that does not lead to true salvation. The missionary David Gates is going to explain to us now the situation there.
In Egypt this past month marked the 4-year anniversary of the brutal murder of 21 Coptics in Libya. 20 of these victims were Egyptian. The Coptic religion, or Egyptian Orthodox Church, comprises about 9% of Egypt's population. These men worked in Libya to give money to their families upon return to Egypt or to save for their own weddings. ISIS proudly murdered these victims to show their disdain for Christians. This should deeply grieve followers of Christ, because the ones murdered followed a religion that promotes works for salvation, instead of salvation by grace through faith. While the ones that murdered them followed fundamental Islam, a religion that claims to be peaceful but also promotes works for salvation. Egypt is also 90% Muslim. Christ loves them and gave himself for all, including followers of these faiths. Pray that God opens the eyes of those deceived in Egypt by false religion. Their lives can only be changed by the power of the gospel that must be boldly proclaimed in this needy land. This is Brother David reporting about what's happening in Egypt.
So last week we talked to Jason Rishel and heard about the tensions in Burkina Faso. We'd like to continue to update you on the situation. After the break, we'll hear in depth from missionary Dallas Brown about how the situation in the country is escalating violently.
In Guatemala, there was a volcano eruption and many people died because of it. And a few days after that, the reports began to flood and blame began to be thrown to the people that they didn't respond in time. And some said the government didn't put out the warnings in time, and so people began to blame shift. Well, and just like you may say, well, it wasn't my fault that people don't hear about God. There they say it wasn't their fault that people died. But all across the world, whether they live in the shadow of a volcano or live in a very metropolitan city, if they don't hear about Christ, the Bible says it's to our shame or it's our fault. So please consider giving your life for world missions.
Welcome back to the Vision News Network. I'm your host, Noah Combs. Let's go to Burkina Faso and hear from Dallas Brown.
Well, we're here in Burkina Faso, and I just wanted to give you an update about what's going on. In the news recently, you've probably heard about a lot of different terrorist attacks and different issues that they've been having here in Burkina Faso. It's gotten so bad that the police in the north have told locals that they're no longer willing to go out of the police station and respond to any calls at all. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a story of how the police were called to deal with a dead body that was there in the street, and when they responded to the call, they found that there was a bomb in the body, killing 2 more police officers. But to really understand why there's all of these different attacks here in Burkina Faso, you have to understand that there's a lot of different reasons involved. You have Boko Haram operating in the east, you have Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda affiliated groups operating in the north, and but also there's a lot of just political tension here. In 2016, there was a coup here in Burkina Faso, and the former president was taken out of power, and a transitional government was installed while they were having free elections. During that period of transitional government, the previous captain of the presidential guard tried to overthrow the transitional government to reinstall Blaise Compaoré, that former president, into power. Well, he failed, and him and many of his top officials were arrested. And so because of that, the former president, as well as many others, have been accused of funding some of these attacks just to make the current administration look bad. And so there's a lot of different things happening. But you know what? Terrorism is an ugly thing. Just the other week, Brother Keith got a call from one of his pastors. His name is Salif, operating in the north. And when he got the call, he could barely hear the other person on the end speaking because he was trying to whisper and be quiet because there were shots going off all around in his neighborhood as there was an attack happening, and they were attacking the police station and the school that's not even 100 yards away from his house. He was hiding there in his home with his family, asking for prayer during this difficult time. But you know what? The next day, you found Salif out in another village preaching the gospel, sharing the gospel with the lost people. Because despite all of the many problems here in Burkina Faso, I'm very excited to be able to tell you that the gospel is still going out, souls are still being saved, and God is still working here in this country. So pray for all those pastors and missionaries that are here and working to see the gospel go out. Pray for their safety, but we know that God is in control.
So last week we reported on Venezuela, and unfortunately the situation in Venezuela is not getting any better. This week an American reporter was arrested by the Maduro regime for supporting the opposition leader Juan Guaido. Also, the past few days there's been an electrical power outage that has plunged most of the country into darkness. Power is out, food is scarce, and tensions are high. We have images coming in from Venezuela that show some of the situation there, and the situation is bad. We ask that you pray for Venezuela and the missionaries and the Christians there. Pray for their safety, and also that they could be a light in the middle of all of the darkness. Pray for the millions of Venezuelans, that laborers could reach them with the gospel. Pray for God's protection on them, that they would have an opportunity to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. This will wrap up today's program. Please pray for the gospel to go forward all around the world. I'm your host, Noah Combs, and this is the Vision News Network.
Thank you for listening to the Vision News Network. We hope you can join us next time.